What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review Podcast. Across from me tonight, Rob, the Punk Ots. Go check out his channel. He's always here with me every week. This week, we've got a pretty good show. Like, I would say this is probably a very important one. If you can't tell by the screen, top 5 Bad Religion albums. I'm pretty excited to talk about this because he's taking the lead on this. I'm gonna be learning as much as anybody else, and we'll talk about why that is here in just a moment. But before we get any further into the show, I do want to talk one thing real quick. Blink 182 is officially back, dude. Bro, what? They dropped an album date today. They dropped a track listing. It's 17 songs. I think it comes out on October 20th.
20th.
Bro,
you know what day that is, right?
That's when you're going to Vegas, isn't it?
That's the day I'll be seeing them. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're the headliner.
Seeing them?
They're the headliner.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that day.
Yeah.
That's actually way cooler.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Are you gonna just go balls out listening to that album the whole day before you go?
Yeah, it'll just be my album, right? It'll always be my Blink album that I saw.
It kind of will.
Day. Yeah.
Actually, that's a good way to put it too. It'll be your Blink album. Mm-hmm. That's dope. And it's called One More Time?
One More Time, yeah.
Yeah, I was reading up on it a little bit, and they were saying that they basically had they came to the conclusion that, like, you know, it's taken all this stuff in order for us to get together. Like, why? Let's do it one more time. Like, I think that's what it's all about, anyways, as far as what I read. Yeah, what are your thoughts on all this, though?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Just out of curiosity. I think I made my thoughts pretty clear on the last few Blink albums. Where, you know, I thought the last album they did was pretty good, but I thought they were in a bit of a decline. I'm not a fan of their more like emo-y stuff, but based on the one song they've put out, I loved that song.
It's a good song.
Yeah, and it's like, and like we talked about it at the time we did the episode. It's a Blink song. Like, I think they're in Blink mode, which gets me happy. They're not in like the other mode that I don't necessarily care for. They're in Blink mode, and that can only be good things. I think that song proved is that they can still just be Blink when they want to. When they want to flip that switch, they are still those three guys and can be those three guys.
I think that so everything has silver linings in my life that I can tell. And I think that the silver linings to the situation is that we got albums that I personally really consider great records with California and 9. Mm-hmm. I really love those albums. I rank them very high. I love Matt Skiba. But the silver lining to that even happening is that these guys probably got a lot closer with all the stressful situations going on, with the plane crash, the cancer stuff with Mark, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, bro. Yeah. I get those two guys mixed up all the time for the last like 30 years. So, but with all this stuff, this scary stuff happening, the silver lining is that they figured out what was actually important to them, and being Blink 182 is what they figured out. And I do think we're going to get a pretty great album. Do I think it'll be a top 5 or 3? Top 3? Probably not, but could it be? I think so. And if the rest of the year is anything, you know, look at what we got. MXPX record. You didn't like it as much as I did, but it's a great record. Rancid, that might be like their second best album. The Mustard Plug record is excellent. CMI record came out of nowhere, blowing the roof off the place. So there's been like a bunch of like top tier albums this year, and I'm thinking like, all right, if I know anything about these guys, they're not going to want to come out here and drop the ball. So on an excitement level, I'm at like a 9, dude. Like I'm ready to rock, bro. I'm ready to hear this. I might get disappointed, but I'm ready.
I'm kind of like bummed out that we already did our big Blink episode, because I feel like I'm about to go into Blink mode again. I was going to do it anyway for going to go see them, but then with the new album, I just feel like a lot of things will be Blink focused in my brain for the next
I think that just put us in a good appetizer for the main course. I think you know, we can do plenty of more Blink content, and it won't be a bad thing. No. But yeah, I just wanted to just see where you were sitting on this, let everybody know that, dude, this is happening. It's coming, man. We got us I call it like the original trio, even though I keep saying that, even though I know Travis is not the original drummer. It still feels like core Blink 182, which is odd because my best album,
most popular, but it's their most popular era.
Yeah, it's the one. If you ask kids that were like in their mid 20s right now, who, you know, what's the original lineup, they would say Travis, I think. So
yeah.
Well, yeah, man. I just wanted to talk with you about that for a minute because I feel like it deserves a couple minutes of our time. So let's talk some Bad Religion.
Sure.
Uh, here's what I'm gonna do, guys. Anybody's watching this, first and foremost, if you don't mind, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go check out all the links in my description to my label. I got this Bullshit Detector album coming out. I printed these shirts too. You can check out my Etsy if you want to pick up merch. It's all done by me, shipped by me, screen printed by me. So if you want to support the channel, it's a good way to do it. You get something that I actually created. That it's not just being like, here's $7 or whatever. It's you buy a shirt, you get it from the artist. Anyhow, yeah, what was I going to say? Bro, I've lost control of what I was going to say there. Anyways, Bad Religion. So I'm going to give you guys like my little opinion on Bad Religion real quick, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rob because he's got a lot more to say and a lot more knowledge on the subject. I was never the biggest Bad Religion fan. It wasn't that I disliked Bad Religion. That is absolutely not the case. I was so focused on the other bands that were around back then. You know how that is, man. There's always one that falls to the wayside. For me, it was Bad Religion. I was much more interested in NoFX because they were kind of silly and immature, and I'm very silly and immature. So Bad Religion is much more serious. Like I fell out of the Dead Kennedys real early on too. Like I wasn't interested in that either. I was more of a stubborn, I want to do what I want punk more so than a political punk. That being said, there is some Bad Religion stuff that's very important to me. I'll just read what I wrote down real quick and we'll go from there because I definitely want to hear your like response to this. Um, All Ages is a compilation from 1995 that Bad Religion put out on Epitaph Records. It's got songs from No Control, Suffer, Against the Grain, and Generator. I think maybe even a couple of live tracks and maybe one more. It's all their early stuff. It's all their early albums.
It's their Epitaph catalog.
Oh, is that
Right.
what it is?
So right after they signed to Atlantic, Epitaph kind of had like one more Bad Religion release, and they put out
Got
basically
you.
a greatest hits.
That's okay. So all these years it was called All Ages. So for all these years, I thought it was a live album.
It looks like one because it looks like
It
it's a concert
does.
ticket the way
Yeah.
it is. But really, if you want to know like what is Bad Religion's core live set, it's basically that. Like the songs that
Yeah.
they'll never not play at their shows are those songs basically.
I absolutely agree with that. And so that was the only album of theirs that I had for a long time. For a long time. I don't remember why. I would assume it's probably because of the imagery and the name. My mom wasn't going to be having any of that. And whatever, that's the mom's prerogative when I was a kid, but so I've always kind of liked the early 90s Bad Religion stuff. I never got into anything post this album actually. Gray Race, I think I owned it, but I never really listened to it. I couldn't tell you a song off of it. Yeah, man. So whenever this stuff was happening, I was more into the street punk type vocals. So the music in the Bad Religion stuff I really enjoyed. It was the vocals I was never really into, man. Like I don't dislike them, but it's not like now I kind of like them a little bit. I've kind of it's kind of like it was Bad Religion. You know what I'm saying? But back in the day, I just yeah, it wasn't for me, man. And it's like it's weird because they are owed so much gratitude because they've influenced so many bands that I do love, um, like a lot. And they were never considered a top band to me, which is so crazy because they probably are like the top band, like one of the greatest, right? And last thing I'll say before I let you talk for a minute is that I just found out what their name actually means too, like doing research for this video.
Mm.
And it kind of changed a lot about like my feelings towards the band. I always thought it was like an anti-God thing. And it was like from what I found out, it was more like an anti-religion, anti-organized religion, anti any way of life that makes it hard on people kind of thing. Even like a religion is like any kind of societal group of people that gets together and causes problems. It's anti that. It's anti-establishment. And I never would have thought that based on the name. And since I didn't get into them, I didn't know that. It's freaking crazy that I'm 41 and just now finding that out. I didn't have the interest to find out. Like, what did I care? I didn't care. You know what I'm saying? So very weird thing to just find out about. So, anyways, I would like to hear your response to my thoughts and what do you think about all that?
That last point kind of blew me away, but I was thinking I was going to have to convince you of that based on your comments last week. Like I thought that's what was going to be almost my mission of the episode, because it's funny with Bad Religion. In some ways, Bad Religion is the most insulting towards religion of any band because they provide actual critique of religion and its role in society. which is funny. That's different than them being like how people may perceive it as like a satanic band or a satanic imagery
Yeah.
band. They're not actually like that. And they like like a lot of forms of punk rock, they criticize societal institutions. The
Yeah.
primary institution that they go by is organized religion. That is like, instead of it being necessarily like the White House or this and that, it is organized religion as kind of their prime target. But if you look at it, it's more of like Dr. Graffin. He's this naturalist. He talks about less than an atheist and that kind of stuff. So it's really in the weeds. Whereas like Slayer, for example, is just doing a horror movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Bad Religion is an actual critique of all of the system and society. And it's funny to me that it just didn't hit you. I get what you mean about like certain really important bands in all kinds of genres that you just sort of miss, and you got all
Yeah.
their after effects.
It's
Like
wild, bro. Like
pretty much
if I
everything
was
we've talked about is because of Bad Religion. Like that is
right,
the
right.
origin band for almost everything, for certainly every part of my channel. Like I
Well,
think you can say that's the genesis of my channel is the Bad Religion era.
I think you're absolutely correct with, especially with your channel. What I will say though is that I've always stood on, just because it was done first doesn't mean it's the best or done right. So there is the little bit of that, I would
Yeah,
say. I
absolutely.
still think Bad Religion deserves more credit than that, but that's how I always stand on that. Just like with Rancid and the Clash, dude. The Clash, I don't like the Clash.
That's
Doesn't
my
mean,
version of this. That is
you
my
know what I'm
version of
saying.
this.
So like,
Yeah.
and what's funny is that since I wasn't given the opportunity to dive into this band, mostly because my mom wasn't feeling it, so I didn't feel the need to press the issue because I thought, man, I've got all these other bands to listen to.
Mhm.
And that's really what it kind of boiled down to. I had all ages, and it was such a great album. I just listened to those songs, and that's what I liked. And I didn't have any interest of going and getting into any of the more of their stuff. And then when like Gray Race came out, I just didn't get into it. So I never
Mhm.
explored the band more than that. And I've seen them play like 5 times, which is crazy for somebody that doesn't really love the band. And it's also crazy that in like the 90s, they're so iconic with the symbolism that I used that on a shirt at my alternative school that I was going to. So everybody knew that I was a punk rock kid.
Mhm.
Even though I didn't really care about the band. Like I had all ages. I knew most every song on that record, right? I
Yeah.
would consider myself reasonably fan of that band at that time.
Mhm.
But that's like where it stopped, and like that would have been an appropriate liftoff point, not like the end. And
Mhm.
it's so crazy, man. Like I don't have much negative to say about Bad Religion. That's not what I've ever had. I've never had anything negative to say about them. I just never had a lot of glowing critiques of them and like, oh, they're this or that, and their songwriting's really good. They're very melodic. I like a lot of their stuff, but it's like his vocals get on my nerves sometimes. I just
Mhm.
they're so well, they're so Bad Religion-y, dude. Like he's just got this like it's not monotone, but it's like it's professor like, you know. I
Mhm.
mean, you know. Um I will say though, I do appreciate the fact that they're critiquing organized religion more so than God, because I am a little bit religious, and
Mhm.
I do think there's a lot of problems with organized religion. So I feel it. You know, it opened my eyes to something that like I don't know. You know what it is? Is like when my friends tell me something or like my boss tells me something, I want to like buck up against it and be like, no, no, no. But if I like just read it, I'm more open to accepting something. It's my wife does it sometimes too. It's really, really weird, man. I know it's got to be annoying to people. I know that drives my friends nuts. But I guess I am kind of glad that I just read that, because I didn't even read it. I heard it on like a podcast, and I was like, what? And I was like, they didn't like they're not an anti-religion band, and I was like, that's an odd name for a not anti-religion band, or anti I guess faith, anti-God.
Yeah,
That's really
because I
what they're
wouldn't.
not.
They're not a pro religion band, and like I said, that
Correct.
they are clearly atheistic and do criticize organized religion as a whole. But like you said, it was if and they've been on TV. Like if they're on TV, you're not saying that's the crazy person or that's the insane person or that's the dangerous person
Right.
necessarily.
That's the
It's
educated
it's
person. That's
presented
the
more as a perspective.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a perspective that's pretty well accepted. Just they kind of lean into it a bit much, but even
But they're
less so.
still
Like
punk rockers though, so they still
yeah,
have that like
and they don't like Graffin's side of it. He actually doesn't even like because he's a true believer in the sense that he's literally a college professor. Like he's a
mhm,
PhD. He's a doctor. So
yeah,
he doesn't like a lot of the stuff that goes along with it. So like they did a thing for a book, New Atheist book, and they had him do an intro more so because of his academic work than who he is in Bad Religion. But he didn't even really like being associated with that group, and it kind of makes you realize like Bad Religion is really its own thing. Yes, he's a
yeah,
professor. Yes, Brett does Epitaph, but Bad Religion as sort of like historical text or whatever kind of exists on its own because, like you said, it also is punk rock. Like it's
yeah.
all these dance things, but it also You also have a song called Fuck You. You also have a song called
Right.
Punk Rock Song. Like, it is still very
Right.
much punk rock and born in the spirit and the time period of punk rock. Absolutely.
It's really interesting, and I'm glad that we're talking about this. And because I've never claimed to be the most educated punk rocker, I've never claimed to be like the coolest or the most punk rock. I
Mhm.
just that's not who I am. I don't care about that. I've got my insecurities, but if I was that insecure, I wouldn't be doing this episode. So, um, yeah, let's continue, man. Let's start this top five of yours. And I hope you put this into like a top five, as in like the number one is the best record, right?
Yes.
All right, cool.
I
Well,
actually
because
I actually
I
ranked.
want feedback from our people, and if you didn't do that, then you can be like, "Oh, yeah, but I didn't really mean that that was number 4." Like,
I
I want
actually
a
ranked
definitive answer.
I ranked all 17. I didn't put as much thought into the bottom part,
Oh
but
my
I actually,
goodness.
because I had such a hard time narrowing down it to 5. Like, this could, if this was like a top 9, it'd have been easy. And it
Well,
wasn't
no,
like
but then just start
ordering
at
them wasn't
5 and
hard,
go
but
down.
I just started at the end. I knew what was at the bottom, and I just started eliminating stuff, and then like I started putting
Yeah.
stuff back, and that's just kind of how I did it. I listened to Bad Religion all weekend and throughout the day, but I only did 2 like full album listen through, so it wasn't really that helpful for the
Yeah,
podcast.
but you
I was
know
just Bad Religioning myself, like, oh, that one's there, that one. Like, I put it on my TV app specifically, so the album cover would just kind of flash up as I was sweeping earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's so what do you wanna do? This is a top 5 video, so let's start with that, and then we'll kinda discuss some of the ones that didn't make the
Yeah.
cut at the end. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
Yeah. It's kind of the miscellaneous, because I do think there's pretty good like outside looking ins
Okay.
with this band.
Well, let's start with number 5.
All right. So number 5 on my list is, and hold on, it's ordered in reverse. So it's actually number 17, 16, 15. Stranger Than Fiction, I have at number 5.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't expect for this to actually be as high as it was. And quite frankly, I guess I didn't want it to be, maybe subconsciously, because this is their major label debut. This is when they were on Atlantic. Although technically it is also released, it was co-released by Epitaph. So Epitaph got to release it for like in certain markets or something like that.
Okay, that's cool.
It was almost like a distribution, it was like a transition period, because Bad Religion going to Atlantic is like one of the most consequential a punk band going to a major label ever. There just wasn't a lot of fallout for Bad Religion. It changed like almost everything about punk music and everything on the underground. But for Bad Religion, they just sort of had a ho hum time at the majors, and then came back. So
It's because they kept writing the same albums. They didn't do like some like it wasn't like they went and started doing disco or grunge. Like they
like
just
they
stayed Bad
didn't, they
Religion.
literally didn't. That's in my notes there. They literally didn't sell out, and it kind of hurt them in a way on the major. It did. Because
What?
they lost their cool factor for not being like in punk anymore. But they weren't like young. They were like literally as old as you and I are now, almost. You know what I mean? Like they weren't like young and hip and in the know either. So it was kind of a downtime. But this album, though, even though the first one that's technically not produced by Brett, although he performs on it quite a bit, still very much in the spirit of an Epitaph early '90s Bad Religion album, even though it's technically not that.
What year did it come out in?
'94, the all important
94.
'94.
I think this is the one that I was like, I feel like I know some of the songs on this. I think this is the one I was looking at, and I probably did have this record at some point.
Well, this would have been if you would have got All Ages. All Ages might have come out like in '95, I want to say, but it was the wrap up of the Epitaph years, basically. It's basically
Yeah,
all the good Bad Religion, or all the hits of Bad Religion, if you will,
yeah,
before this period is what All Ages essentially is.
yeah. And I think this one was available at places I was shopping as like a young person, like at Best
Oh yeah,
Buys,
yeah,
Target,
yeah.
maybe. And so I probably got it at that point because it was a punk album that was accessible.
Mhm. And I honestly think the other stuff that you and I like actually hurt this album a lot, because I just said 1994.
Yeah,
Well, Green Day and The Offspring and Rancid are those things. They are hip and
yeah,
young and good. They were all those things, all inspired, and many of them launched specifically by Rancid. No
right.
Effects,
Or
Punk and Drublick.
yeah,
Bad Religion got really old really quick in the '90s. Like all of a sudden, like holy
that's
crap,
true.
they weren't that old. Like chronologically, they're like 2 years older than all those bands I just mentioned. But in everyone's brain, they're like ancient compared to those bands because they're literally peers of like Black Flag. So they go
Yeah,
all the
that's
way
weird.
back there, and that
Dude,
is
that's
crazy.
crazy. I never really thought about it like that, but you're absolutely correct. Um, do you have any songs that stick out? Like a couple, 2 or 3 that you
Yeah.
like a lot?
Let me go on a few of them, and I have mostly the the popular ones on this one. And that's the
Sure.
one thing. They tended to tease out the right songs for their hits. So you have the re-recording of 21st Century Digital Boy, which I think is a little bit better on this album, just slightly. And of course, the big ones, Stranger Than Fiction and Infected, which we've all heard a million times. But you also have Television featuring our boy Tim Armstrong,
That's a great song.
who's on this one. The Handshake and Better Off Dead. I love all of those as just like top level songs.
The first handful that you said, like the hits out of there, I recognize those names. Television, I recognize because it's got Tim on it.
Mm.
The other ones I don't recognize, but now that I'm thinking about it, this might have made my list too.
Mm.
If I was going to do a separate top 5 on my own, this album is actually really good. Now that I'm remembering, this is what's going to take some time. So I wanted to start talking about this stuff with you to remember things, because I do remember
Yeah.
having this record now, mainly because of Television. When you said it had Tim on it, I was like, oh yeah, I did have this record, because I would seek out anything that had that guy on it. Especially back then, I was uber dork like for Rancid. So anything that he was associated with, I was owning it.
Yeah, and it's funny because the cover of this album, and this is a thing that I've come to at Bad Religion. So Bad Religion, of all the punk bands, because they're actually okay. Let me reset this. So Bad Religion, they're like the Michael Jordan of punk rock, and let me explain this. This is my hot take. I came up this morning as I was taking a shower. No lie.
Okay.
Okay, Michael Jordan is a product of the 80s, right? He's an 80s guy. Most of his prime was actually in the 80s. He's peers with people in the 80s. He's an 80s guy. However, he won championships in the 90s. So similar, Bad Religion is a product of the 80s. They are in 80s punk rock. They are a product of that. But they won their titles in the 90s. In the early 90s is when they ended up owning. Now, I said all of that to say that that's actually because it was their era of signing to a major. That is kind of their era of, I think, when they sort of tried to produce pop music. And they are, even not necessarily consciously, subconsciously, they are the most 90s of all these bands we talk about, even though they were older and go back to the 80s. But maybe that's why, because everyone else is just finding their way. They're already secure in their 90s. If you look at this, look at that album cover. That's a 90s album cover. It's black and white. It's and actually they had several black and white album covers, and not black and white like a Rancid way. It's like a photograph.
No,
it looks
it's like a
90s.
black and white photograph, not high contrast black and white imagery.
Yes, it's something that could be like a Counting Crows album or something, right?
I was just thinking it looks like a grunge record. It looks like a Pearl Jam album.
The song Infected, they said specifically because they were going to a major label, they already had the song. They wanted to make it a little grungy, which you can kind of hear that on there. Like, so they did sell out a little, and I wouldn't say sell out. They were just sort of kind of just in their time.
Adapting.
In the same way that I might wear a hat that's fashionable now. It doesn't mean I'm selling out to the hat. It's just what was in now. And if you look at all that 90s stuff, that's the other thing about it. It's not as cool as the other punk rock. It's not as attractive. And it's not like as 90s as the stuff it was actually on a major label now competing against. Like you compare that to like Bush, and yeah, I'll take Bad Religion over Bush any day, but you understand why the public bought Bush instead of Bad Religion in this time period.
I don't, but I see your point.
You see what I'm saying though? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna buy Bush over Bad Religion, but like I was trying to think of like a perfect 90s and only 90s band, and like the Bush, like that's
Nirvana.
Yeah, but Nirvana's so legendary though too that they almost go out of that. Whereas I'm thinking about like bands that were just pretty good, big, kind of on the stratosphere that these guys would have been on.
I get a mountain of crap every time I say that Nirvana is not a punk band.
Mm.
Oh man, I just wanted to say it one more time on here. I'm learning from you, sir.
A direct line though, between Bad Religion and Nirvana. Like I think.
Oh, dude, I honestly don't even really care. I just do it for the lulz.
Because, like, let's face it, none of the pop punk exists without Suffer, and we'll talk about that later. But like, guitar music does get really popular in the mainstream, mostly because of Nevermind, and thus you already have a ready-made scene here that Bad Religion has created, and they're the first band actually that's signed. They're signed before a lot of these other bands are actually signed. That's why their major label album comes out in '94. They're not like the Offspring who are big or the Rancid who are big and then are hunted after. They've already left the train, which the story of Epitaph, it's even more crucial that Rancid and NoFX stick around because look at that. Epitaph, not only did they lose the Offspring, they lost their in-house band. They lost Bad Religion in that same exact time period.
That is pretty wild. Yeah, I was watching a video. I don't remember what I was doing. Oh, I was editing a clip of, I don't know if you saw the last two like little clips that I dropped. They're like 4 minutes a piece. You should watch them. I'm working really hard on these things. I'm learning my editing. But I was watching some video to get clips to put in that, like just to have imagery in the background and like moving parts. And I saw this like thing with when you mentioned Rancid talking to Matt Pinfield. And so I went back and found that. And first off, it's funny to hear them talk as young men, and their voices just sound so
They're
much
so
different.
little. Yeah,
I
they're
know,
so little.
but Tim's like his feet just won't stop moving and kicking around. I'm like, this dude's socially awkward so bad.
It has no
And then
bones
like
in his body. He's just kind
right,
of.
but I like the way they said it. They're like Lars was like, well, there's nothing really wrong with being on a major label. That's just not what we were trying to do right now. And Tim was like, yeah, it's just like all my friends were over here. He's like, I just didn't want to not be around my friends. And I was like, that's an answer I would have given, dude. Like, oh, all my buddies are over here, so I'm gonna take a little less, but enjoy my time over here better. Like, because there's a lot to be said for that. Money is not end all be all for me. So I would much rather enjoy my time than be paid to be miserable. So, anyways, I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, and it filled that specifically what you're talking about filled the gap that was left by Bad Religion in a lot of ways.
Correct.
Rancid filled that gap, I think.
I think so a
ways.
lot, especially for Epitaph. And I think that you take Rancid as like the foundation, and then you have stuff like Pennywise and man, I don't know. There's a number of bands on Epitaph back then. I think the Descendants were on Epitaph, but all that stuff was like what was set on top of the foundation that Rancid, or like it's like Offspring laid the foundation. Rancid was the one that was continuing to hold it there. It
Offspring
was like,
funded. I would say Offspring funded
the foundation. Rancid was the
yeah.
foundation. The rest of the bands were what was laid on top.
Right.
Yeah, bro.
In the in a universe created by Bad Religion.
Facts. All right. Number 4.
Number 4. So number 4 is my personal favorite, but it is number 4 on my list.
Wait, hold on.
It's my sentimental, like, if I'm just doing like.
That's what this is. Is your top 5, or is this the top 5?
No, it's not the top 5, but I really don't have. But it's just so kind of like Indestructible is to you.
Yeah, I get it now. I'm understanding.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah. So like,
go ahead.
If there was ever a time in my life when listening to an album was the funnest for me, it was like my fondest memories, I guess, are of Process of Belief. I get real hesitant when we make these lists to put the Process of Belief.
That's the album title?
Yes.
I don't even know that album. Wow.
So go on YouTube, type in the Punk Aughts Bad Religion, and my most viewed scripted video is a whole 15 minutes on this video. And a little bit of a Bad Religion history lesson. I can't believe you don't know this album. This is their Epitaph comeback album.
I told you I didn't get into the band.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, like this is how much I just wasn't a Bad Religion fan. It's not like I disliked them.
Yeah, that's just so
I just didn't care.
No, that's awesome. Like seriously, that's genuine. So funny enough, I sort of bookended this with Bad Religion's major label, their debut on the major label, and then when they came back to Epitaph,
that is
Process of Belief.
Kind of makes
how
sense,
it worked
though.
out. Yeah. And to give a little bit of background, so what happened on the major is like they say they were dropped. They were truly not renewed in the truest sense, where their contract simply expired. Both sides did not want to re-sign. Like it didn't work. And
no, but that's I like that, man. That's honorable, dude. Like both sides are like, you know what, we'll split ways, because that major label could have financially benefited from having Bad Religion, and that is a fact. So the fact that they were like, yeah, you're not happy, we're not happy, let's just split up.
They could have done stuff to extend their time, I'm sure, and all of that stuff. So they didn't. Now, what happened is once Stranger Than Fiction didn't become as big as Dookie, basically, and got lost in a lot of shuffle of 90s alternative that was going on at the time. The thing about a major is once you're not selling big, you're just not really a priority anymore. And yes, there's still maybe more capital than there would be on a smaller label, but there's just not a lot of focus on the band. So the band just kind of did their own thing throughout the 90s, and they don't have Brett. And to me, that was the difference, is the songwriting is just a step below. It's not bad. It's just a hair below. And again, they're older. They're not cool. Blink-182 is popular. Like these handsome teenagers are on TV doing their things, and Bad Religion's opening for them. You know, that's just kind of how it was. 2002, a bunch of stuff happens. Most specifically, they come back to Epitaph, and as a part of that deal, Brett comes back to the band. Now, not only does Brett come back, but they don't replace the guy who replaced him. So they bring in Brian Baker of Minor Threat, of Dag Nasty, of all these other bands to replace Brett. But he's a better guitarist than Brett, straight up. And he's a touring guitarist. Brett was still never going to be able to tour again with his responsibilities to Epitaph. So the arrangement came basically in the studio. They're a six-person band because they kept Brian Baker. He's a full member, helps them write songs, but they're all together. And Brett will do a show or two, usually at the release of an album, because he is a very part of their album. Then the first time that arrangement came to be was the Process of Belief, which once again, like they didn't launch it this time like they did with Suffer. But once again, they're at the forefront of a whole new wave of punk. And now They are the literal grandpas, but still young enough to be cool enough. Like they're not like how when I saw the adolescents in this era and they look really old. You know what I mean? It was more
Yeah.
like your cool high school teacher at the time was what Bad Religion sort of came across as in 2002 versus, Fat Mike and Tim Armstrong and Jim Limburg, who kind of
Right.
who they were hanging with. Like those are the guys that were hugging on stage and stuff.
Yeah.
But Bad Religion is they're still the biggest dogs in the yard again in this era and they're bringing along on Epitaph. They're bringing along all this other new stuff that's going to take over music at the same time. So they are
Right.
right at the nexus, and that's the background here. The album itself, though, I mean, top to bottom, I love it. I could probably name all the songs. Let me pull it up to pull up the track list, and you were going to respond, and then I'll give you like 5 like super important ones.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I'm definitely interested to hear more about this. Uh, I would also like. Sorry for the minute ago. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just a little distracted, trying to not make noise.
Yeah, no.
Um, I would like to know more about Brett leaving and coming back. If you got a minute to tell me more about that, because I
Yeah.
knew that happened, but I didn't really know why or when or anything. I just knew that it happened. Well, I feel like not a very good punk rocker, not knowing this stuff. But like I said, I would rather be honest and transparent with people than being like, "Oh, I'm this or that." Nah, dude, this is just I love this, man, and I love learning. So let
So
me have it.
it came down to just a division of labor. He couldn't be at 2 places at once. And you got to admit, this is 93, 94. Epitaph is growing too fast, to be honest with you. Like they can't keep up with the demand of the Offspring, with what Rancid and NoFX are starting to do, what Bad Religion was doing. They simply can't keep up. They literally run out of a garage. And Brett's doing that and trying to fulfill those things and trying not to actually literally sell out because he had offers at this time, millions that could have been set for life. And ended up not taking any of those offers. But it became just he can't go into it. And Bad Religion's still a punk band at this time too. You know what I mean? They're
So it
not
was due
touring.
to the label necessities.
The label necessities, and then he helped them very much do the Atlantic thing. But as soon as they were with Atlantic, everyone says it just kind of wasn't cool with Brett anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and it was funny because Brett was and the band says Brett never ripped him off, but they never thought about it. Like, oh wait, our label head and our guitarist are the same guy. Like they just sort of realized it later. Like they don't ever feel like they were really ripped off by Brett, but like, oh, like that really is not for a young band. That could have been very delicate. And so once they were no longer though under that control, I think there was a little bit of a split. And then they also were getting older, so the tensions were starting. Jay Bentley, their bassist, worked at Epitaph, and just that normal sort of we've been on tour forever and we have tension. They had an actual fight, and then come to find the 90s come along, and Brett really gets hardcore into his drug addictions as well. So that's happens. He had to basically get clean, like him getting clean. They actually reunite technically in 2000 on that album. Brett contributes a little bit of like behind the scenes production and is credited on a song. So they started writing together again really in 2000, but 2002 Process of Belief is when they got it going again. But he was already through his thing. He's actually part of why he was investigated by the police is they didn't believe because they thought he was like this grungy punk rocker and they couldn't understand how much money he had on him. Cash.
Wait, he was invested by police? Wait.
He was on the front page like the LA Times for like his crack house bust that he was involved in.
Wait, what? Dude, I don't know about any of this.
Yeah, he was pretty. So he was a guy in LA that was hanging around Hollywood type, that just got he'd been into drugs earlier and then it kind of stopped as Bad Religion got bigger. And then kind of I think as Bad Religion started falling apart around him and his pressure, it got worse into it. And he had to do like an actual drug rehab program, like a court order thing. We had to do a month.
Bro,
I think one of the Bad Religion guys actually went and visited him in there, even though he doesn't remember it happening.
I'm gonna have to do a whole video on this. I had no idea, bro. I'm a terrible YouTuber.
So check this out. Here's what Fat Mike says about Bad Religion. So Dr. Graffin, the lead singer, not straight edge, but has done less drugs and drinking than any straight edge ever. But like, it's not like straight edge as a thing. It's just not as it's just not a drinker. But other than that, as Fat Mike says, all the core members of Bad Religion have been the biggest drug addicts or alcoholics at one point in time. Jay Bentley was losing his sight in the 2000s from as much as he was drinking. And then Greg Hetson got kicked out of Bad Religion because of his drug and alcohol issues. Brian Baker, as Fat Mike would say it, Brian Baker was in Minor Threat. So before he would do a line of cocaine, he would say, F you, I invented straight edge. And then he would do a line of cocaine.
Bro, so I now think that Bad Religion might be my new favorite band. No, I'm just being silly, but like, dude, I knew a little bit about a little bit of that stuff, but a lot of that I'd never heard. I guess it comes with being a fan. That's so crazy how much you could just miss by not paying attention to a certain group
Yeah,
of
and
people. Because I
these
feel like I should
nuanced
have known about
details.
this.
Yeah, like,
Do
but like,
what?
I mean, ultimately, these are dumb details because like, it does it matter for fandom? No, but the thing about Bad Religion, they're such a documented band. Like I
Yeah.
said, I right now I'm looking at I have Greg Graffin's book, I have the Bad Religion book over there because I was kind of browsing through it. Smash is basically half about Bad Religion, half about Green Day, and the guys literally write
Wait, what is?
themselves. The book Smash by Ian Winwood. So the main, I mean, Smash after the album Smash, but it's basically Green Day. There's a chapter on Green Day, NoFX, Bad Religion, The Offspring, and it culminates in 1994. It's like, you know, what
Okay.
happened in 94, and that we'll get to that actually when I go to number 2 album. So
What
I'll
is that book
reference that
called?
book. Smash.
By who?
Ian Winwood is his name.
Sorry, go ahead then.
Yeah, I'd say if there was one text that guides like my channel, like as far as a book that is sort of required reading if you really want to be in the weeds of what I talk about, it's that book.
Okay, it looks like I'll be getting that then.
Yeah, it's good. They got an audio. They got I think I've. Well, I got
There's
it in
an
a few
audio book
formats.
of that. I'm buying it
I'm
right
pretty
now.
sure
Then
I
'cause
was gonna get one the other day. It got offered to me.
Yeah.
And got something else, but
Let's go.
yeah. So really quick on the songs here because I totally did not hit up the songs here.
No worries.
Obviously, "Sorrow" is one of their biggest songs ever. One of their songs that had actually they had several videos that were on MTV. Essentially, one of their only songs that was on MTV. But it's a video that, like in the Epitaph era, a video that kind of penetrated. It was actually supposed to be a much quicker song because it's known as being a like a solemn song. It's literally kind of like
Okay.
a ballad. Originally, it was fast, and someone just came into the studio and said, "Oh, that sounds like the Runaways." And Brett doesn't like the Runaways, so he slowed down the song as as a response to that. So
Dude,
he's like,
that's
"Let's make
kind
it
of
a slow
amazing.
song." Yeah. And again, Sorrow as a punk song would have been kind of cool. Sorrow as this like post 9/11 pre-war ballad is like a legendary, it's played at every show they've ever played, and it wouldn't have happened had they not have slowed it down. It just wouldn't have stood out the same way.
You know what? It's crazy. I've never thought of punk rock in the light of post and pre 9/11,
Mm,
but there's a definite difference in music after that because
mm,
there were a lot of punk bands that were not pro America and pro like rah rah. Now, look, I'm very patriotic. I'm not trying to be a jerk on either way. I'm also don't think that we're the greatest place in the world just because we're America. I'm not a dumb person. I know I understand our like faults and where they lie. There was a lot of music that came out that was like, yeah, look, this may have happened, but that doesn't mean that we need to now go do something even worse. And like,
mhm.
I don't know. I don't really want to get into politics much, but I never really looked at it from that perspective before. And there's definitely a line there with music. There's a line there with production, with what bands started, what bands even came out. Because there were some bands that came out after that that were like, there was some sketchy stuff that came out in like the early 2000s. Because it was, I'm not going to call it like it wasn't no Blue Eyed Devils type stuff, but it was close. Anyways, you said something that really sparked like a thought in my head about that.
No, it's so interesting to me because, like, to me, I found most of my punk rock in that time period. So, like, I freaked out, and I've got comments on my Bad Religion video that they say I liked them before they were political. That makes no sense to me. I can understand that about NoFX. That makes no sense to me because one, if you say Bad Religion got political, no, they didn't. They were always like that. You were just able to transfix the political moment at the time onto them a little bit differently. They've always
Wow.
sung about these same big ideas, these same basic. They've never
What a
changed it.
crazy statement. Even I
Now,
think that they've always been kind of the same band.
yeah. Now, here's the difference. They are always reacting to current society. So, if you know a lot about like the George H.W. Bush era, you'll probably actually most understand the early 90s Bad Religion, right? But
Yeah.
they're forged out of Reaganism like all the other 80s punk bands. They're a big voice as part of punk voter in the Bush era. Like a lot of punk rock, they didn't know how to react to the Obama administration in like a good punk rock way. So that's where a lot of
Right.
punk rock, I think, actually lost its steam from being so intense in the Bush era. And then like their Age of Unreason, it's
Oh, dude.
probably a decent Trump album, but you wouldn't get like here's the thing: you won't know it's a Trump album 10 years from now because you're not going to get the references unless you were literally there, you know, on Twitter in 2018.
I think that stuff kind of dates music anyway. So,
Mm,
you know,
right.
I think it's necessary in that moment in time. Although I don't mind stuff that's dated. I don't mind movies that are dated. I don't mind
Mm,
things that sound like a particular era because I like that era if I like that era. It doesn't matter if it's from it or something made after it even. But
mhm.
yeah, man, how would you have responded to Obama? Because everybody had such vitriol for George W. Bush. They hated that guy so much that when
Yeah.
Obama came into office, whether he was doing good or not was almost irrelevant. It was just like, oh, thank God. It's kind of like
Yeah.
how people felt with Biden, except that Biden's not doing a very good job.
But I think we're still
I'm not going to
crazy
speak too
though.
much on that, but
I
like,
think we're still crazy now. We stopped being a little crazy in 2008. Like not the world didn't stop being crazy. We
no, no,
collectively as a society, because I can
yeah,
relate. Like I stopped following politics in 2008 for like about to really till 2012, and I never really stopped again after 2012. But there was this collective, I think, exhale, and I don't even think like the dude was that good of a president, but like the George, not only George Bush himself, but the era of 2000 to 2008 is just it's chaotic now, but it was pretty chaotic in that we had 9/11, the economy crashed, we were at World War, there was going to be anthrax in the mail. That time was freaking crazy.
I don't think people remember that very well
We've
because
memory
they
hold
all,
it. We've memory hold it. It drives me nuts because again, like in the same way Jello is, Jello or these guys are forged by Reagan. Like I was forged by that era. That's where my politics
right.
really always kind of lie. Like, oh, not necessarily lie because they've changed somewhat from them, but that was the root. Like that's
And
where the
I've never
flag was
been
planted.
political hardly ever.
Yeah.
Still not really. It's because it makes me
God
so
bless you.
depressed. Man, it's I dude, it causes a lot of arguments, man, and I'm just
Mhm,
like not in it for that, bro. Like I'm in music to escape kind of, and it's a lifestyle for me, and I'll do the things I need to do. But the thing is that even if you're into politics, you're still gonna piss people off anyway. So like, what do I care? I just won't be in them then because they're like, well, you need to be in this because you need to make change and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, but if I told you my politics were, you still would be angry about something in it because we're
mhm,
all so different and nobody understands. Like the time right now is so messed up because okay, so like back when I was growing up in the '90s, and I'm not saying that we're better than anybody or whatever, but the way it was back then was that we would have a group of people and we'd all identify because we all liked this particular brand of music. But from that point, we all branched out and had our own identities. We had the guys that liked this kind of food, or they're from this kind of neighborhood, or they're this kind of politic, or they went to this kind of church, or they didn't go to any kind of church, or their dad was a white trash guy, or their dad was from New York, or whatever, man. Like you had all these people from all these different backgrounds, and it was accepted to be friends because you identified with something and then like your personal politics and religious beliefs and all that stuff was what it was. It was yours. But whenever the Trump and I guess Hillary thing happened, it was so it got so crazy that I don't think we're ever going to go back from that.
mhm,
It's now you have to believe everything that I believe completely, or you're a POS. And it's like, well, hold on, because I'm different than I was in my 20s. But if this was 20 years ago, I would agree with you more. So what? I'm a bad person because I've changed a little bit. I've got different perspective and I got more wisdom and age and time on this earth. It's so crazy, bro. Anyhow, I'm gonna rant
mhm,
on that for 2 hours, bro. It drives me nuts because I don't know what to do because I'm not a liar and I don't have put up a facade. So like you get what you get with me, and I hate it bothers me because people just simply can't understand that we're all different. Like we
mhm,
just are. They want us to
mhm,
all be the same so much so that we're going to these extremes, and it's like, dude, we're different. It's okay to be a little different
mhm.
on many different levels. It's all right. It's okay. And people just can't, they don't want that to be the case. I think the people that preach the most peace oftentimes want the most, well, war.
Mhm.
And,
I,
well,
I
use
think
that word for what you want. Anyhow,
I think it's and it's a good talking point because I think it's very unique to that 90s perspective that you have, and that's a little bit of where we differ, is because like I find a lot of people who like a lot of this 90s music actually have that general opinion. And if you look at what culture was like at that time, it's just like the 80s are a rah-rah political time, the 2000s are a rah-rah political time, the 90s are a disaffected era. It's different. And I think like
yeah,
Bad Religion kind of embodied that. And if you look at like even them as a band, Bad Religion, a very overtly political band, as I mentioned there, even it's a little 90s, it's detached, it's just kind of the
yeah,
vibe of the era. And it's again part of culture that you sort of came up on, where I think someone like me, I kind of come of age in the early 2000s when this kind of starts being where we are now. And so it's just but I've had to get away from it myself too. Like I got a new phone today, I deleted so many apps because like why do I want to make myself crazy? No. Am I
bro.
keeping like Instagram? I purposely only follow band stuff So like it's just my happy place to get updates on bands. Like and
Right.
I just do that. Speaking of Kyoto Now taught me about environmentalism. I'm not kidding about that. Um the song Epiphany is a very, very slow song, kind of ballady. They blatantly ripped it off of the intro of Sticking in My Eye. Jay Bentley ripped off the bass line. So whenever Fat Mike plays it, you have Hefe going, just singing the intro of the Epiphany. I love it.
That's awesome.
And obviously, like Evangeline and The Defense, I absolutely love. But a song that I think you might like is called You Don't Belong, which is just the recap of like the early 80s punk scene. And it's one of the funniest Reddit deep dives is to identify everyone that he's talking about. Like some are very obvious, like Milo went, but he even says that Milo went to college, but you knew about that. And it's just all these little references, some famous people and some only people they would know. And it's just such a cool, and
I like that.
There's a line where he talks about like, and the whole thing is you don't belong. Like, did any of this matter? And so when I was going to college, there's this line in there. Can you use this for a diploma or a worthy cause? And I'm like, yeah, what the fuck am I doing all this shit for? And I would just listen to that, which by the way, if you are in college or in grad school, there's something about Bad Religion playing in the background the whole time that is soothing. And I mean that without saying a joke. It's like, it's kind of speaking that vocabulary that you're working with, but it's more relaxed. It's punk. It's not classical
That's
music,
awesome.
but it kind of serves that. And you get motivated to gain knowledge because you're like, in this context of Bad Religion, that's be more punk is gaining more knowledge. So you sort of you keep yourself motivated, or you get mad at the university. I'm like, this is how Dr. Graffin must feel being overwhelmed. All right. Dude. So we are at where were we there?
We're at 3 now.
Okay. Now we're at the point where we could just shuffle them all. And if you ask me tomorrow, it might be a different one.
I've got one favorite and then everything else up to that's kind of shuffled.
All right. Number 3 is Against the Grain, which in my opinion has a few things going for it before I even get to the songs. To me, it is maybe the best album. I don't know. The Suffer album cover is pretty iconic and that dude is pretty awesome, but I just like the Against the Grain. I'll never get a Bad Religion tattoo as long as my grandma and mom are alive. I'll never get the Crossbuster probably. So yeah. I've always said, well, if I'm ever going to get a Bad Religion tattoo, I'll just go ahead and get the Against the Grain with the purple. I like purple. You know me.
That would be a weird tattoo, though.
Some people have got it, but it can't be.
See? Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, they get the one corn.
They get the one corn thing. Okay,
and the rockets going the other way.
Anything around it would be. Oh yeah.
Yeah, people get it. It's a comic tattoo, but
I've always hated that cover.
Oh, I love
it.
Like?
Is that you said it's your favorite cover?
Probably, yeah.
Interesting. The Suffer's definitely mine, but of course it is.
Yeah,
right?
Suffer's more iconic. As a cover. Now, songs. Let's get to songs. So there's one really, really bad song on here that it's like the second song on here is called Turn on the Light. I freaking hate that song.
I'll go check that one out in a little bit.
Turn on the light. It's just
horrible
song.
Wait, yeah. I don't think
it's just terrible. Okay. Yeah, after that though, on that side or on this side, look here. Modern Man, Get Off, Blender Head, The Positive Aspect of Negative Thinking. Maybe my favorite Bad Religion song, Anesthesia. Love that song. Song actually about like drug addiction too and what it does to children. Flat Earth Society, which I can listen to all day long. Speaking of what we were talking about earlier, and then Faith Alone, which they re-recorded a couple of years ago on a piano, which actually sounded very good. And then of course the song Against the Grain, which is used on like sports talk radio. I've heard Against the Grain be used. It's pretty Against the Grain.
Dude, that song pops up in the weirdest places. You're right.
Yeah, there was a show, the Dan Patrick Show used to live, a sports talk show, and they would have a segment called Against the Grain, and they actually got Bad Religion to give them the okay to use it, and their whole segment would be, again, watching a sports show, no one else is, and I'm just there like in the background, like hearing the stat about Patrick Mahomes, like Against the Grain.
It's one of those things, like I was talking to a buddy from Mustard Plug yesterday, shout out to Mustard Plug, Brandon, he's their trumpet player, and he's super, super nice guy. And we were talking about how in that movie Renfield, they mentioned Mustard Plug and ska, and I was like the only guy in the theater that got it and understood it and knew that it was a real band and was like psyched. And I was like, okay, yeah, sorry, I'm a dork. And so I like it when I hear bands. I love it when I hear good punk rock in movies, or I see, like I was watching a movie called Run, Sweetheart, Run, and it is a terrible movie. I liked it because it's so bad it's good, but in the movie, there's this point where they're in this bedroom. And I was like, what? I paused it and took a photo of the TV because I couldn't believe it. There was an Alkaline Trio poster and a Rancid poster in this like kid's bedroom. It was so not what I was expecting, and based on the kid's appearance, it wasn't. I was very surprised.
Gilmore Girls. I'm telling you, if you fall asleep watching NBA playoff games, you wake up and Gilmore Girls is on, and suddenly there's a Lars Fredrickson poster in the background, and there's and it's clearly like some intern that was decorating the set was like one of us, and be like, okay, they want today's popular music. Here you go.
I think that's weird though. How does that even happen? Because I think it's Epitaph specifically because, bro, I tell you,
It's a lot of yeah.
every single time I see something cool in a movie, it's always like an Epitaph band, and it's oftentimes Rancid. If it's looking for punk rock, it's usually Rancid,
Yeah,
which I think is pretty rad.
It probably is Epitaph, because Epitaph, I assume, for like a movie studio, even though Epitaph's an indie, like in the scheme of labels, to a movie studio, they're a big boy. You know, you can actually make a meeting with them versus, no disrespect, but if a movie studio wanted to meet with you, right, it would be kind of
Yeah,
a little different, right?
It'd be like, oh, hey, hit me up on StreamYard, and we'll talk for a minute, and then
it's a little bit
whatever it is
different
that you want, it's free. Here you go.
It's a little bit different than the guy who discovered the Offspring. You know what I mean? That's
a little bit
different.
A little bit. Although the way things are headed right now,
true. That's true.
I got 5 albums dropping in the next like 3 months.
You might be the new Mr. Brett. Which, by the way, let me contrast. Okay, we said what a crackhead Brett was. Now, do you know why he's called Mr. Brett though? On the other end of the spectrum. So back in the day, I don't remember what one of the band members called his house. Well, Mr. Brett was so affluent as a kid that his maid picked up and called out to the phone, "Mr. Brett, come here."
Whoa. That explains the lack of like studs and like mohawked hair.
They did a little bit of that in the 80s. They grew
a little bit, but not a lot, man. Like
they literally, but they broke up at like throughout the 80s. So when they came back together, they were grown men though too. So I think that
their early photos, like I almost had one on this little overlay here.
Yeah.
And it was an early photo. Dude, they looked about as punk rock as I've ever seen them, and they still didn't even look like they look like,
well, so here's the thing.
Like oil mechanics at a freaking garage. Like
they are. I tried to make this point in that video I made like I said, they are the second generation of the first generation of the second generation of punk, and like that makes no sense. Like, don't even try. But here's what I mean. So yes, they are peers of Black Flag and the Descendants and the Adolescents and technically X and all those bands. Yes, they are technically peers of all those bands. They are the young end though of that. So
yeah.
So those bands saw the Ramones and the Pistols and went, let's do punk. Bad Religion saw those bands and the Ramones and said, oh, we could do like our friends, like the older kids in class are doing. So they're the same generation, but at the slightly younger end. So by the time they would have kind of been old enough to really be like in those punk rock things, the punk rock scene had fallen apart basically in LA.
Dude, and
then Bad Religion had a flop of an album, kind of like because the punk rock scene had fallen apart. So they go on hiatus for almost 10 years until Suffer comes out. In that time period, Brett starts building up Epitaph and actually learns how to record bands. That's really what he did. He went to school for recording in that time period. Whereas Greg goes over to Wisconsin and really gets his academics like super, super, super. So they all reunite in 98 and or in 88. I made that mistake twice now. Great. And no, you don't have to correct me in the comment section. I know it was 88, but they were gone. He does his school thing. They kind of come back together for Suffer. So they really had.
Correct you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. They have like basically a 7-year period where they're essentially dormant in the mid 80s.
Okay.
And that explains the Into the Unknown, which my last album I listened to Into the Unknown because it's not even a punk rock record, like straight up. Like it's a new, I'll say it's new. Jay Bentley quit. Jay Bentley quit in the middle of the recording. He hated it so much. He's not on the album.
Wow.
He quit in the middle of what it was is Greg and Brett really like prog rock. Like they still do. And they were just really into it. At the same time, the punk bands were kind of like, maybe we should do new wave because punk had crashed. You know, by the time like 82 comes around, punk is already like dead. It's no longer a trend. And so a lot of their peers, they said they either got really strung out on drugs, like really bad, or they went to new wave. There really just wasn't a punk scene to think of. And they were getting so much into the prog and wanting to put the new wave to it. They're bringing in keyboards. They're doing all this stuff. And they just kind of got too rambunctious as youngsters. You know what I mean? And Jay just wasn't with it, though? And he just left.
When you have like well, yeah, I mean that album is bad, bro. Like, yeah, I've only heard it a couple of times. I don't have a lot of.
You can't listen to it. You can't listen through it. Like, and people comment, and like, there's the guy who said he's a prog fan. I believe him. Like, yeah, you probably like it. Other than that, if you say it's your favorite Bad Religion out, you're just trying to be a hipster. Like you're doing
Oh,
that
dude,
thing.
yeah. People say stuff like that. I don't even pay any attention because it's so ridiculous. But like, it's interesting when you have a identity as a band, and then the scene that you're a part of, whatever that scene may be,
Mhm.
falls on hard times, and then you have to decide, okay, am I going to continue and try to go through this and just keep doing me until things work out, or am I going to try to change with the times? And if you're not like a street punk or a crust punk kid where like everything you do is punk rock,
Mhm.
then you're going to end up doing something like that. You're going to go, well, it's okay, I don't care, I like all kinds of stuff, so I'm going to go with this here. I find it I kind of do that with my label by accident. Like I'm working with mostly punk bands, but there's this one band from Houston that I'm talking with about working with. They're like a 80s synth pop post punk group, and I
Yeah.
really like their music a lot. And then TJ, my first release was all hip hop. So like I am trying to not pigeonhole myself, but at the same time I still want to be mostly or predominantly a punk rock label. I guess it's kind of following suit of Epitaph what they did. Um
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. I was going on a tangent there, but yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting crossroads to come to. Is my point, I guess, is that
Well, it's funny
uh,
because most bands do this when they get older, right? Like they'd
right?
be like, "Oh yeah, let's just do a Blink-182. Let's do an emo album." They kind of decided that deep into their career.
I feel like they kind of that was the direction because I mean, if you listen to their stuff all the way through, like from song A at the very very beginning all the way to their last stuff, there's like a really natural, smooth progression. There was never a point that I thought where they just went kerplunk. It's a different band. It was like a transition that was
Okay,
like,
well then AFI.
okay, now that you got me there. Boy, I tell you, AFI is two different bands, bro.
Right.
There's
And so
AFI that sucks.
Bad Religion is three different bands because you have Hardcore Punk Bad Religion version 1.0, How Could Hell Be Any Worse version, which that was like number 9 on my list. Great album. It's a different genre of music. It's straight up, but it's pure punk rock. Then you have Into the Unknown, which they became a new wave band who they would go to shows. And here's the thing: people liked their first album, so even though punk was dead, people would go to the shows to see Bad Religion, and they have a keyboard player, and they're like, "What the hell is this?"
That would
So
be pretty messed up to have to deal with that.
they basically die as a band, and they would play shows every now and then. And Greg hated it. He said, especially that era, like 86, 87. He says,
Yeah,
you're going to these, and they're not going to Gilman, you know what I mean? They're going to these
right.
like dive bars.
Yeah,
Gilman's fun. They're playing these dive bars with these drunk bikers who are just like throwing bottles at them because their guitars aren't loud. Like he'd say, it's just like this guy's literally becoming a college professor. He's like, why do I want to do this? So he kept
yeah,
the band going more as something to do with his friend Brett, just like, let's kind of just keep this going. And then boom, Suffer happens. And that's the third incarnation, the skate, like the Bad Religion we all know and love. So there's really
yeah.
there's three versions of them.
I think How Could Hell Be Any Worse is pretty close to the melodic hardcore stuff. I think it is
So
mainly because of the vocals, I guess.
I think they wrote the same songs that they would have, like, I think if they brought those songs to 1989 Brett, it would sound like a combination, like it'd be basically those same songs, but with the slick production of like a Suffer and just a little more catchy. I think they wrote the same songs, but they produced.
The production is quite a bit different. You are right about that.
And it's got that 80s sort of slow vibe to it that a lot of that 80s California punk has, that more grinded out kind of stuff.
It's more like a chug a lug than like a da, 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 da. It's more like da, 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 da.
It's
Like
more
it's just a
it's more
like a
My
different
War
vibe.
than Damage. If you want to go on the Black Flag thing, it's more of the My War vibe than the Damage vibe.
Yeah.
Although I think what they were going for is more of the Damage vibe. Like that's more of like kind of what their spirit is. But that's just how it kind of came off. And that leads me into number 2, which in my opinion, probably the most important punk album of the last 30 years, Suffer. And I say that because it's literally the catalyst for like everything else that we talked about. Yes, Dookie was bigger. Yes, And Out Come the Wolves was better. But I don't know if either one of those two albums ever get made, and on the scale that they do, if Suffer doesn't happen. It basically births skate punk and pop punk as a genre.
Well, yeah. I think Suffer is that came out in 88, right?
Yep.
So, okay. Here's my question. Is Suffer as important as Operation Ivy's release was?
I would say it could be co-equal.
I was just thinking that, like,
Yeah.
because they came out roughly around the same time.
because
Uh,
that scene and they like Operation Ivy even what helped stretch it into pop punk, I think, a little more because of
well, because what
Operation
I was
Ivy.
thinking was that, like, if you have, I think those are the linchpins of everything we love.
Well,
Suffer and Operation Ivy Energy.
and I think Milo Goes to College has to be right there too. Yes,
Not
that
even
one.
close.
Yeah,
Not
that
even
one.
in the same conversation.
We can't, but
Like, not even this.
we can't say this stuff also spawned all the other melodic stuff and not say that Milo Goes to College is not in there, or that Early Descendants in general is not in there
I mean,
in
I don't
that
agree with that.
trio. Yeah, I don't think we
No.
can we can't put Op Ivy on there and then not have the Descendants on there if
That
that's where
doesn't
we
even
were gonna
make
go.
sense, dude. The Descendants didn't like. But so what I'm saying is that Operation Ivy Energy created like a ska punk sound.
Mhm.
Bad Religion Suffer created skate punk.
Mhm.
Milo Goes to College didn't create anything.
No, but all the bands that made music that were inspired by those two bands all sounded a lot were spiritual
Yeah, but
descendants of the
that's not
Descendants.
that's not.
That's why I don't think you cannot have that band with those other two if you're gonna have those
You
other two.
absolutely can, because that band is not as important as those two. I'm speaking of specific releases. Now,
Disagree.
Operation Ivy happened to be like that was like their only release, but like had they done other albums, that would still be the one. That would still be
Mhm.
the point. And I think that Bad Religion Suffer is still the point. I mean, I don't even understand that statement. Like, I don't agree.
But like, how do you get
Eh,
No Effects without combining those two bands? Without combining Bad Religion and the Descendants? Like, that's No Effects. There you go.
No, it's not,
How is that not like how?
dude. They're literally Bad Religion with a fat obnoxious
The Bad
idiot on
Religion
stage.
with like the aesthetic of the Descendants, like with the style of the Descendants. Yes, that is what you just proved my point. That's what No Effects is.
I mean, agree to disagree. I don't agree.
Because to me, if only these bands, so you can only put like the lighter side, then you can only credit that to Op Ivy if you're going to do that. Like they would have to take full responsibility for that because you can't really create any of the lighter side to Bad Religion if you're on that.
What are you talking about? Of course you can.
Really,
Yeah, you can. I don't
can't.
consider Bad Religion. I consider
No, but you're not going to. But they're not a jokey band, are they? They're not a comedy band the way all these other bands were that came in their wake, and that's
wait.
why I think that's where you have to put the Descendants in that.
Nah, I don't agree with that.
So
Yeah.
that just came out of nowhere. That like we're just gonna say that came out of thin air. Like Fat Mike invented that.
I mean, I would definitely give Fat Mike more credit than the Descendants. I just don't agree with that. I think Fat Mike would have existed without the Descendants existing. I don't think it took the Descendants to give you Fat Mike.
But
And
then
so
okay,
for that reason,
so,
I would say
so
Fat Mike's more important.
push it forward 2 years then, because now when everything's blowing
To
up
what?
to like between 98 and 05. Because then I think it's unquestioned that you're bringing the Descendants. So maybe if you're just going early 90s, then maybe
in what bands are you telling me
we just
wouldn't
talk,
exist?
okay. So you think like Blink-182 exists in their same form without the Descendants? Like,
Yeah.
no. That is
Okay.
ask the members
I
of
disagree.
Blink-182. Like they would say no, like
I mean,
absolutely not. Yeah.
I don't know that we would have got this exact same albums, but like, and my point wasn't that like Blink 182 wouldn't. My point is that without those two records, we wouldn't have gotten anything that we got. It doesn't mean that the Descendants weren't some sort of
what a tangent we went on.
Do what?
I said, what a tangent we went on. I forgot that's how it started.
but it's crazy though to be like, yeah, but you know, there's a band, because if that's the case, then okay, then we have to talk about Pennywise now because they spawned this thing, and we have to talk about this band. But
no, we don't. Pennywise is much simpler. It's just Bad Religion. They just did Bad Religion. Pennywise just did Bad Religion a second time.
But my point is that the Descendants didn't do anything new, and Bad Religion did, and so did Operation Ivy. The Descendants are just the Ramones. That's all they are.
They don't stand out in that scene, really?
I don't think so at all.
Really?
I don't think so at all.
Like when they're touring with Black Flag, you don't think the Descendants stick out like a sore ass thumb when they're touring with Black Flag and those other SST
I mean, you could
bands?
give me a bazillion different lineups with important bands that they don't really match up together. That doesn't mean that they're as iconic or influential. And I'm not saying that they're not iconic or influential. I'm stating that there's different levels to it. And at the very top, you've got Bad Religion and Operation Ivy. And like 2, 3, maybe 4 levels down, you'd have the Descendants. I'm not saying they're not influential. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm not even speaking on whether or not they're good. I'm just saying that they're not the same, that the linchpin is those two records, because you got all the music that we like in those two records. Blink-182 could absolutely have come from just Operation Ivy and Bad Religion. Just because Blink-182 are immature. Now, granted, I know for a fact that Blink-182 cites the Descendants as a major influence. I'm not discrediting that or arguing that. I'm just saying that you still could have gotten that without the Descendants, but you couldn't have gotten most of what we like without Operation Ivy and Suffer. Was my point.
All right. And so just to put it in perspective, so this whole term of, we talk about it a lot, and I think it's a really useful term, of melodic hardcore, like Fat Mike
Mhm.
likes to use. That is like the definition of like what Suffer created. So you could say it's that. So there's a few ways to say. You could say it's skate punk, which it is, but skate punk is kind of I feel like it's hard to get an identity away from Suffer actually to even define what it is. It's just like, is skate punk a genre to its own, or is it all the stuff that just sounded like Suffer and that spun off of Suffer? You know what I mean?
It's kind of like that.
There's some
I
skate
don't
punk
like
that
the
does,
term melodic hardcore. I don't ever use it. So
you don't use it. I think it's helpful
No.
because I think what is skate punk? And I think the best definition I ever heard, I forget who made this, of skate punk, was that it is a take of, you can take it either as you have this pop punk kind of thing, and it's the little harder edge of pop punk, just that one edge that's a little harder, or it's the harder edge stuff, and this is where Bad Religion came in. But all of a sudden they put in all this melodic stuff into their music and completely change it. It can be either one.
I guess my thing is that I've seen nothing hardcore about Bad Religion or NoFX or Pennywise. All those
Right.
bands are skate punk bands to me. And melodic hardcore bands, I don't even know. That's, to me, that's just I almost said Matt Fike. It's just
What a
it's
bass
just
player.
dude. I gotta come up with something to use that for.
Matt Fike. Love it.
But melodic hardcore is just him being insecure. It's skate punk. Melodic hardcore is such a stupid term to me.
Well,
But
he says that in defense where people call them pop punk, and I'm like, well, it's lowercase p pop punk is what this stuff is.
yeah,
And that's, to me, that's a good
but I mean,
definition, because like Blink-182, you might say capital P, like and
right,
anyway, it's
right.
anyway, wherever it is, those labels, they start right here. And so going through the album,
So what are we talking about right now? Number 2,
we're
being
on Suffer.
Suffer.
Yeah. That's
That
somehow
only
we
took us
ended up
like
on
20 minutes to get to.
yeah. So I was like, can't even have it pulled up. All right. So there's a few songs I don't like on here. I think it's okay, Forbidden Beat. I hate that song. Get that song out of there. It's just another one. It's a little chanty and stuff. Forbidden Beat.
It's all right.
Yeah. Other than that,
I don't love it, but I don't hate it.
Other than that, You Are the Government just kicks things off, like, and the guitar sound on this album, I love it, love it, love it. Give You Nothing is just such a good fuck you song.
That's probably my favorite Bad Religion song.
Land of Competition, Best for You. Of course, the song Suffer. That intro, one of the best intros in punk rock. The jing, like where the thing is right. You think of it live when Hetson was doing it, and he's there literally like punching the guitar and jumping up and down. Plus, I love the lyrics of Suffer. What Can You Do? And of course, the song that the book was titled "Do What You Want," which I think is a pretty good like signature.
Also a great song.
They open with it often, and I think it's a perfect like open, just the way that like kind of sets the stage and it comes in. Jay Bentley, shout out to him. So we've been talking about bass players. So you have the complexities of Matt Freeman. He's kind of a combo of Matt Freeman and Fat Mike. He influenced Fat Mike, so maybe that's where the combo comes in, because he plays a lot of that fast, more punky stuff like Fat Mike does it, but he does it at a very precise level and does so many extra kind of little Matt Freeman-y things around it. Another guy who didn't really know how to play, just sort of learned through the first album and has kind of taught himself. Another guy that learned kind of on guitar, and I think has that sort of guitar style to his bass. The off timing stuff, just ridiculously difficult to play. And there's 3 members to be a Bad Religion that are the core members. It's Dr. Graffin, it's Brett, and then it's Jay Bentley. And those are kind of your 3. They'll come in and out. Those are the 3 members that sort of make up Bad Religion as the constants. And those are the 3 general songwriters.
I've never heard anybody call him Dr. Griffin before.
Oh, it's a fun joke.
I'm sure it's very common. I've never heard it. It's so.
But it's funny, like it's a joke because, like, we talk about. There's one other. I was thinking, so there's the Offspring guy. There's
Is it
Dexter? Holland.
Yeah,
there's Milo, and there's Graffin, and the punk rock PhDs, the punk professor. There's one other guy, and I can never remember who it is. There's one other guy. I think his band might not be as famous.
Who would that be?
They're always into like really deep science too. The way like Dexter Holland is like this biologist, and I believe Milo's a biologist. Evolutionary biology is evolution is what or zoology. That's what Bad Religion, Greg Graffin, his professorship in zoology. He did write a lot about religion later for his and he got a lot of that info just from writing Bad Religion lyrics and said where that kind of inspired him. But zoology, evolution, like origins of species, all that kind of stuff is his stuff. Now, okay, let's get to number one. So number one, and this was not very hard for me. This is what I thought it was off the top of my head, and then I looked at the song list and I was like, oh yeah, number one for me is No Control. And to me, I like Suffer. Suffer's a more important record, but I think there are a higher density of good songs on No Control. Change of Ideas, Big Bang, the song No Control. Sometimes I feel like we could do without. Automatic Man, which is a great
good song.
I Want to Conquer the World.
That's a good song too.
Another just of their classic bangers thing, that early video they used to have. Probably, which maybe I like The World Won't Stop, but maybe my favorite, at least live song by Bad Religion, is You. Ironically, one of their non-political songs, actually a love song, You is, but it's got that bass line that starts out do 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 do, and it just kind of keeps on going, and picking up its steam the whole time. I love No Control. Again, some days I might have said Suffer was the best. Suffer's definitely the more important, but really I think I'm pretty good at saying No Control for me was the best. I think the song sounded best. I think it was produced amazing. I can listen to it all the time. I love it. Number one.
So when I was doing the little bit of research I was able to do on this, I just felt like I was underprepared to give an extensive list and conversation on it. I did keep going back and forth between No Control and Suffer, so I would basically call them 1 and 1A. But I think I did have Suffer up by just a small amount. But that's because I'm a novice when it comes to this band. I do think that I picked the obvious choice maybe a little bit, because I don't have the knowledge that I should have maybe or could have. That doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. That was my choice. I think I put Suffer above, but I think No Control, had you shown me that album and said, how much do you like this record? I would have been like, I can take it or leave it. But upon listening to it, I was like, oh, damn, I really do like this record a lot. So I like your list, actually. I want to give Stranger Than Fiction and was it Progress of Belief?
Process of Belief.
I don't know that one at all, but Stranger Than Fiction I haven't heard in a long while. I want to give that one another spin. And
good for you to have them back to back too, because like I said, they're the bookends of the major label at time.
Yeah. So I'm growing the Spotify playlist. I'll add some Bad Religion to it tonight and tomorrow.
Real quick, I just want to give a few honorable mentions. I did have just outside Recipe for Hate. Recipe for Hate, I think in their punk era is their most experimental album. There's literally like some country steel guitar they have on that album. It's super good, super 90s. There's like an industrial, almost proto nu metal song on there. But it's the album. It's the album with American Jesus. Like
that is a great song.
It's got the Bad Religion song on it.
That is the Bad Religion song.
That is the, and you're like, okay, what? Explain what we were saying about what the actual religious critique is. There it is. It's in that song.
Yeah.
And it's a political song. It's not a religious song. It's about using religion in the service of politics is really what it criticizes.
So I started skating again, like skateboarding. Like literally yesterday, I took my daughter to the skate park with she got a new bike. Today is her birthday. So baby girl, if you see this, happy birthday, Charlie. That's my little princess. She's 9 years old now. It's so crazy. Thank you. But I bought her a bike for her birthday. She's been asking for a new bike. She's gotten taller. She needed a new bike. So I went and got her a new bike, and I was like, hey, you want to go to the skate park? Because she just wants to go hang out. She just loves making friends. Yeah. She's like, yes. And I was like, all right, I'll take my skateboard. She's like, are you really? I was like, yeah, don't even. I said, I may not even stand on it. And we get out there, and I just couldn't help myself, dude. And I wasn't doing any like tricks, but I was making laps on the park. So I was going like up on the platform, down the bank, up to a big bank ramp, coming back down it, and then coming around and then riding back up onto the, I guess you'd call it like a box area. It's like a ledge. But it was incredibly nerve-wracking and scary for me to do that at 41. I haven't skateboarded in like a decade, maybe more than that, and my knees and ankles are jacked up from years of abuse and going to shows. So but what I was going to say is that while I was there, I took my little Bluetooth speaker. I was jamming out Bad Religion this morning.
Authentic skate punk experience. You were having
dude, for real. You know what? I never even thought of that. Ha! That's hilarious.
The skate punk band, you had it.
So what's the song
that
videos
says were made, man, when people did what you were doing with the camcorder? Sorry.
Oh, bro. What's the song that they had that's got something about it's got the F word in it a bunch of times, and it's man.
There's a song, fuck you.
No, it wasn't that, but it's
what to do. We'll say fuck
no.
you.
Anyways, oh, that should have been the one I heard today. That would make this even more glorious of a story. So I get there this morning. So I wake up early now. I used to wake up at like 11 a.m. Well, I get up at like 8:30 now. And so I got up at 8 o'clock this morning, or like 8:15, and I got out of the house by 9. I wanted to go skateboard and hit like an early morning, like just by myself. I
Yeah.
get there, and there's all these freaking women out there doing yoga in the park.
Uh-huh.
All these like rich white ladies, which I'm just not comfortable around. And so I'm like, oh, dang it. So I pull up into the parking lot. I get out. I look over and I'm like, oh, there's like 10 little kids outside hanging out at the skate park. None of them on a skateboard. One of them had a
Mm.
scooter, and like they were just in my way. So I was like, maybe I can get them to leave by playing some punk rock. And whatever song it was, it had fuck in it like 3 different times. And I saw the moms looking at me as I'm just skating around, and I had like a Suicide Boys hat on, and I think I had a Knife Crime T-shirt on with the knife going through the palm. Like,
Yeah, you look like a real winner over there.
yeah, dude. Like, and what's funny is like in reality, I'm a pretty successful entrepreneur, and the Knife Crime shirt was my own company, and like they wouldn't know this without asking, but I look like a bum, and I'm like, no, I actually created this clothing line, and this design was mine. This screen printed in my house, like, you know. But I am a people person, so I was like, hey, what's up, guys? Talk to the kids, you know, a little bit. And I had one of them like kind of follow me around. So I was just talking to him. He was a nice kid, man. They were all nice kids, but when I first got there, I was like, dude, I really wanted some like me time. And
Yeah,
it is what it is,
you were
man.
in a playground. Yeah, that's
Yeah, but I did listen to some Bad Religion in front of some kids. Maybe I planted a few seeds that'll sprout into some beautiful punk rock trees. Who
All of a
knows?
sudden there's this problem in Houston where these kids during church are like questioning their preacher and stuff. Like,
So I don't know about that making me super excited, but if they're questioning authority, I'm down. Uh Speaking of that, I should put Pennywise on next time. There's a couple songs they would like to hear.
yeah, there's
Um,
I think of Pennywise when I think of like skating specifically, although I think of Bad Religion more as skate punk, but I think of like actual skating. I think of like the people I knew who would skate, they like Pennywise.
you know what, dude? Let's do a top 5 Pennywise records
Mm.
video next week. I do know enough about Pennywise to be able to do a top 5 Pennywise record list, and I think that they're an important enough band to deserve the list, and also an overlooked band enough to make this list kind of unique on the platform.
Yeah, and I want to sort of defend them a little bit too. I think not necessarily to you, but to like
No, you
the
won't have to
public.
me at all. I'm a huge Pennywise fan.
To the public. I want to sort of smack your objections about other people's
Wait,
objections about
is Pennywise not a cool band?
They have their haters. They have their haters.
Really? I am interested to see what these haters are saying, because Pennywise is, well, awesome. Like, I don't even know what else to. Dude, do you
So
remember
there's
the
this
first
whole
Throw
there are
In?
bands
Look at
called
me.
which I like to call like I don't know. It's not like they're made guys. They're in like this special suite in my brain that only like certain people have a key card to. And Pennywise is in that suite. So is Bad Religion. You know, Rancid. No, like there's a special like thing where all the punk rockers hang out in my head, and they're all hanging out. You know, watching skate videos probably. I don't know what they're doing in there, but definitely Tim Lindbergh and Fletcher are welcome in that room.
Pennywise is such a good band.
Mm.
That's crazy that people would be not into them.
Yeah.
You know what's funny, dude? Like, I know you got to get going here in a minute. I'll let you get off here in just a second. I was looking for like albums that came out this year because I was checking like my rankings list, because
Yeah.
in November I'll start making that video because I'm going to want to put a lot of work into it. Now, if I need to add something at the end of the year, I guess I can. But like on January 1st, I want my top 5 albums of 2023 to drop. Maybe even like New Year's Eve, even. You know what I'm saying? I want that
Yeah.
top 5. I said top 5. I meant top 10. It's already like a really, really tough list for me to make. The obvious ones are there, but like, dude, there's like 6 spots that I don't really know what to put in there because there's like 20 records that deserve it. The Defiant, their album drops before the end of the year. The new Blink album drops. I don't know that I would put Blink on there anyways because I don't consider them a punk band, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends what the record sounds like, I guess. Because if it sounds like Dude Ranch, then I would put it on there, I guess. But yeah. Oh, what I was getting at was that I didn't know that Anti-Flag album came out this year, and I was like looking. Lies They Tell Our Children came out in this.
Oh,
in
yes. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like,
That was this year?
Yeah, and I was like, "Ooh, what a bad year to release a record for."
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just thought it was. I found it. I don't know, kind of funny, I guess. If I
I
was to be
forgot
honest.
about that because that's with all the guest vocalists on almost every song. There's a guest vocalist. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
did
kind of.
I did a video on that song and my my microphone wasn't turned on or something, so it never saw the light of day. I think that was
Dude,
serendipity.
oh yeah, kind
Looking
of.
back, that probably worked out for me.
I've done that a few times.
Yeah, because
Like where
in my head, I had a bunch of takes. Like, oh yeah, I totally like wrote a script for it and did a whole thing.
dude, how much shit would we get if we did a top 5 anti-flags video? Like,
Oh god. Well, it would be the
like
last podcast.
uh, I mean, I don't have any interest in doing that because I don't have any interest in listening to the band anymore. I think at this point, I can confidently say that that band has been permanently soiled, and it's weird because I really did think like, okay, that happened, and the rest of the band had nothing to do with it, and I'm pretty confident that they didn't know anything about any of it. So I think I could still listen to this band and just not like talk about it a lot and promote it. And then I listened to it the other day, like I don't know, 2, 3 weeks ago,
Mm.
and every single song, I could not quit thinking about it. I just couldn't. I couldn't get it out of my head. And because a lot of it's because of who they are. And so every time they said something, I was like, I don't know, man. I think you're kind of hypocritical, bro. Like
Yeah,
whether or not the details are what the lady said, like I've come to the conclusion that something terrible happened. And so, boy, I tell you, it ruined an entire era of music for me. And I think I'm going to take it a little personal. I
it's
don't want
ruined
to get
part of
into
my
it, but
identity. I'm not even kidding. So
what?
it's ruined part of my identity. And let me explain
Yes.
very quick. There are two bands that I credit with like the way my brain works these days. One of them is on our screen. We just talked about for the last hour and a half. The other one we're never going to do a show on. And it's
Right.
those two bands that sort of shaped my my thoughts and my philosophy. Like they really did. And that's why it is like, no. You led me to believe a lie, then fuck you. That's kind of my mentality towards
It's
it.
so crazy, man. I do think that the truth lies somewhere in between the two stories. I think it probably leans closer to hers,
Mhm.
obviously. But I do think that the actual truth is somewhere in between all of that. But I think it's probably not in the middle.
Yeah, I think we're still safe, like staying away from that as a band to discuss for sure. I think.
It's so weird, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to discuss it anymore either. I'm sorry I even brought it up. It was just so weird that I saw it on there and but I did like a few weeks ago listen to it and I couldn't. I just was and I was
Yeah.
just I was standing firm on the I want to know more before I judge anybody.
Mhm.
And I guess I've just heard enough and I've learned enough to make
Mhm.
some conclusive uh I guess statements about it.
Mhm.
And I was very surprised that I guess I don't know. I don't know what that means. It's I'm
Mhm.
not perfect, so I've made stupid judgment calls on like supporting something or listening to something or watching something that I shouldn't have.
Mhm.
But that one really it affected me, man. It really
Yeah.
did. I guess it's got to be because of who they are. I would imagine. I
It
think if
has to
they
be because
were,
I've had that moral conflict with a lot of other pieces of art and entertainment that I like, and I generally just try to take it on a case by case. But I generally still will enjoy the art,
I
and
can't.
I
I
so
shouldn't
they
be
separate the
surprised.
art from the artist. But this does not apply in this case. That
Well,
does not apply.
I shouldn't be surprised because I adamantly do not separate the art from the artist because it was created by that person. And
Mhm.
like as a general rule, I don't watch anything with Kevin Spacey in it anymore. I don't. There's a lot of people that I don't mess with. But anyways, let's change the topic. Get on something more positive. Anybody that needs help, I hope you get it. If anybody's been experiencing something terrible, please reach out and talk to somebody about it.
Mhm.
I do want to make sure that that is what I end that on. If you need the help, it is there. Um, yes, you are cared for, you are thought about, and people are here to help if you need it. Uh, yeah, dude, Pennywise, this should be a pretty badass video. Actually, I haven't listened to them consistently in like a long time, so this will be a.
Mhm.
I've got other stuff, but it's something I don't put the record down as often as I should, and
Pretty
like jam
similar,
it.
yeah. And I'm excited. This week I just danced around my house all week listening to Bad Religion, so I'm excited for more of that with Pennywise. So they have that sort
So,
of fist pumping kind of energy to
oh
them.
yeah, dude, they're definitely a rah rah band. I think maybe the following week we should try to come up with a topic that's not a list and just see if we can do it.
Yeah, like
I think we can. I'm working on some smaller like uh mini doc type videos. I'm
mhm.
doing one on No Idea Records and Florida punk rock. Um I'm still working on that. I just haven't had the time. I'm gonna try to get the audio recorded tonight and start editing it tomorrow. But with this new car thing, I have to pay attention to that. But um yeah, dude, I guess you got to get out of here, man. What are you doing tonight? Family
I gotta
stuff?
go to. I gotta go to a. Yeah, I gotta go to. I think my daughter has an event.
Nice. Well, I'll let you go, bro. Hell yeah, dude. Good talk, man. I learned a lot, and I'm excited to go listen to some more Bad Religion. So,
Yep.
for everybody out there that's watching still, thank you so much for your time. Like the video, comment on this jank. Go check out the Punk Aughts, dude. That's the homies channel, bro. What are you doing? Also, throw in the comments other topics you'd like us to cover, because it's kind of nice to get fresh eyes occasionally, and just like an idea might go, oh, that's a great idea. So, and if you do give us an idea that we use, I will credit you on the show at the very beginning. I will make sure you are shouted out as this is the person that gave us this idea. If you're a patron member, obviously you get input, so just reach out and let me know if there's something you want me to cover on the channel, and I will get it done. I got some Blink-182 stuff dropping tonight, so yeah, everybody, it's just a little like 1 minute thing, but it is something I worked on. So have a good night, everybody. See you next time. Peace.